Welcome to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska on Big Cabbage Radio.
Mike Malevsky here at Big Cabbage Radio in Palmer, Alaska. It's my great pleasure to welcome a couple of people who are wearing attire that says NRCS. So I'm going to ask one of you to both introduce yourself, full name, and tell us what NRCS stands for.
Thanks for having us. NRCS, in my opinion, is the best federal agency in the government to work for. That stands for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and we help farmers and ranchers protect and conserve their natural resources on private lands.
And your name is?
My name is Tracy Robillard, and I am the Public Information Officer with the NRCS here in Palmer.
Thank you, Tracy. And?
I am Elizabeth Bazink. I am currently acting as the Assistant State Conservationist for programs here in NRCS, Alaska.
Okay, so you two have quite a bit that we can cover because although the USDA has been a familiar acronym here, and we've had various representatives, even the director of the USDA here, in to be interviewed, you're talking about some program elements that perhaps need to be highlighted at this time because of some things that are happening. But also, as I understand, we want to be talking about the year-round aspect of the services that you provide. So let's do the what's coming up in the near term that might be of interest to listeners to Ag Matters.
Definitely. Well, it's a new year, 2026. We're getting ready, planning for our growing season this year. And so this is a really good time for producers to be thinking about what programs are available to them that could assist them with achieving some of their goals as they're getting into their field season this year and next year. So it's a good time for us to put the word out about these conservation programs that we have available. They're open to any private landowner, farmers, ranchers, and these are really incentive-based programs that can provide financial assistance and also some technical assistance to help you achieve your objectives on your farm or ranch. And so we have 3 flagship programs that we wanted to talk about today, and also one new program that just launched last month. So if I could just kind of start with kind of our 3 flagship programs we wanted to talk about, and I'll kind of have Elizabeth talk a little more about each of those too. But those are, it's going to be acronym soup, so bear with me, but it's EQIP. That's the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. The second program is CSP. That's the Conservation Stewardship Program. And the third program is the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. We call that one ACEP. And so if we could just kind of jump in and talk a little bit about that the first program, the EQIP program. I'll kind of kick this off a little and then hand it to Elizabeth that EQIP, this is our hands down the most used program here in Alaska. Last year, we awarded 49 EQIP contracts to Alaskans, and that totaled $28.7 million in financial assistance that went directly to Alaska farmers, ranchers, producers across the state. We are always looking for applications for EQIP. You can apply at any time, and it's a really good program for anyone who's new to working with the NRCS because you can use it on a very specific part of your operation where you're having a resource issue. For example, soil erosion. We could help you come in and do some conservation practices to reduce that erosion. If you're having issues with irrigation, we could come in and help you develop an irrigation plan. We could put in an irrigation system on your farm or ranch.
Well, let's stop for a moment there because I understand. I can just guess at listeners saying, okay, you could put in. There are usually a number of aspects of a project. One is the planning, and the second is to get the money to fund the thing, and third, actually to do the work. So the planning and funding, that makes some sense. But who does the work?
Oh, the work would be the producer. So how this typically would unfold is the producer would come into our office and talk with a soil conservationist and say, hey, look, I'm having a problem on my operation that I have right now. And this could be simple as my garden, the garden that I use to make food for my family, or something larger, peony operation, whatever. Size does not matter when you're talking to NRCS about our programs.
Okay.
Somebody comes in and says, hey, I've got this particular issue. I'm not getting the yields that I expect based on everything else that's happening with my operation. Can you talk to me about some things that can help with those yields? And a soil conservationist goes out and says, hey, there's a few things we can do here. Let's look at your soil amendments. Let's look at your watering. How is that working out for you?
Okay.
And together, we outline, here are all the options of things that can help you solve this problem. What do you want to do? And together you have a conversation. The producer says, you know what? I think I do want to look at having an irrigation system. Fantastic. We take measurements. We talk to engineers. We develop a plan that says, hey, if you want NRCS to help you fund this, here are the designs and specs that it'll have to meet in order to use taxpayer funds to do this project. So the work is on the producer.
Okay.
The
Very good.
initiation is on the producer. We provide the technical expertise that says if you build it this way, you will increase your yields.
I think that's very helpful, as you described it, both of you. There are two terms that are used here that may have some understanding on the part of the listener: resource and conservation. Could you define those two terms in the sense of how they fit within our topic today?
So NRCS uses an acronym, SWAPA. Yeah, I'm throwing another acronym at you, but this is how we look at natural resource concerns: by soil, water, air, plants, animals, and energy. And within those broad categories, we have a lot of different resource concerns. For example, you could have soil erosion, you could have a soil quality issue. So when we say natural resource concerns, those are the areas that we're focused on. And then with conservation, we're looking at how we can help our producers have sustainable operations, keep producing, while also protecting that resource for future generations. So it is kind of that blend of protecting natural resources and also supporting agricultural production and development.
Okay, very, very nicely done. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely
Elizabeth,
agree with that. And so we want to help producers with the concerns that they have on their property. They can come in with a lot of things, and maybe the concern that they have, maybe it doesn't quite fit in with the soil, water, air, plants, animals, energy, but there's probably a piece of it that does. And so part of the soil conservationist's job is to figure out what those pieces are. And so I can't help you with a labor issue on your farm. That's not something that I can do. But can we look at some of the management activities that are going on that would reduce your labor requirements? Can we look at implementing some, not equipment, but the irrigation? If you didn't have to hand water it every single day and you had an irrigation system set up, that would dramatically decrease the labor. And so even if you're thinking about your operation and, man, none of those things that Tracy just listed off really would help you, I bet you we could find something that can help with the problem that you're having by evaluating what your operation is going for.
Okay. Again, very nice. That I think is helpful to listeners. So I've been speaking here, Mike Malewski at Big Cabbage Radio, with two people from the NRCS, Tracy and Elizabeth, and we've talked about one of the three acronyms. Let's move to number 2.
Yeah, so our second program acronym here is the Conservation Stewardship Program, CSP. And this is a program that we have launched in Alaska within the last few years. It's somewhat recent for here in Alaska, not in the rest of the agency. They've been doing it for years, but as all things ag, it just looks a little different in Alaska. But this program is a little different because you enroll your entire operation into the program. And you get an annual payment over 5 years, and that payment is basically incentivizing you to keep doing the conservation you're doing. And then there's additional payments to adopt additional conservation practices. So we like to think of this program as something for the producers who really want to go above and beyond and achieve a higher level of sustainability and environmental stewardship on their operation. You can do some of the same types of activities with this program as you can through the EQIP program, but you can also do some things that are a little unique, that go kind of above and beyond. And you can apply for this program at any time, just like all of our programs. Did you have anything to add to that, Elizabeth?
Maybe an
on
example
CSP?
of what would be above and beyond.
Yeah, of course, of course. And so when we're talking about EQIP, usually we are fixing a specific issue. We're not necessarily trying to tackle an entire operation. And for conservation stewardship program, one of the big differences is we're looking at everything that producer has. We are evaluating the entire operation, what's happening at the farmstead, what's happening at the base of operations for where the storage facilities are, the pasture, the crop, or if we're talking more of a homestead operation, everything. And so if you're already doing amazing, great stewardship on those properties, we want to help you continue to do those great things, but then also solve this little problem that you have over here. And so we're still talking about practice implementation. We're still talking about evaluation of the situation as a whole and how can we make it just a little bit better. Typically, a CSP producer is somebody who has already worked with NRCS for an EQIP project. We have typically, it is not required, but typically, CSP contracts are significantly longer. We're looking at several years of continuing to build upon foundation that a producer has already created. And that's really the bigger difference.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Well, that only leaves us with one more acronym to go.
One more here. So this is our ACEP, Agriculture Conservation Easement Program. And a lot of folks would say that easements are the ultimate form of conservation, because what you're doing is essentially protecting that land from future development and keeping it in agriculture in perpetuity forever. And that is a very big decision for a landowner to make. That is a legacy that the family is leaving behind to protect their farmland. And we have a really good partnership here in the Mat-Su with the Alaska Farmland Trust on these easement projects. So there's two different components of the easements. One is specific to those ag lands and protecting those ag lands from non-ag development. The other is a wetland easement program where we would essentially pay a producer to take some lands out of ag production and restore them to their natural hydrology for the purposes of conserving wildlife habitat and wetland habitat. And so those are very big decisions. If anyone is just curious about how these programs work, what an easement potentially could look like on their farm or for their family, please give us a call, reach out. We would love to talk with you more about it.
So you mentioned a partnership with Alaska Farmland Trust. We've interviewed representatives from that trust over the years. How do you work with that entity? How does that work? What's that partnership about?
Yeah, so the way this easement program works with the ag lands is that a third-party entity needs to hold the easement, not NRCS, not the landowner. And so that's where Alaska Farmland Trust comes in. They are able to be the easement holder, and they work with the landowner directly, and they work with NRCS to make sure we're meeting everybody's mutual objectives. In a lot of cases, a producer wouldn't want to put their entire farm under an easement. They may want to just put in certain sections of it in an easement. They may want to make sure that they do have some development rights on the property if they want to, build homes for their grandchildren or whatnot. And so the land trust really help coordinate with all the parties involved, and they are ultimately the ones that hold the easement and are responsible for maintaining that easement.
Okay, funding. Where does the money come from to pay the landowner for doing this? I know that Alaska Farmland Trust seeks monies in order to do things in the past, but are there funds available through NRCS? Where do the monies come from?
We get funding allocations annually from Congress, and that's where all those funds come from.
And then they're used to pay the farmer to put it into trust?
Yes.
Oh, Okay. All right. Well.
I do have one more program.
Oh.
If we
okay.
have, if
We have
so,
time.
In addition to our three main flagship programs we just discussed, there is a new program we wanted to kind of put out there to our listeners about regenerative agriculture. This was announced in December by USDA nationally, and this is part of the Make America Healthy Again initiative by the White House. It's called the Regenerative Agriculture Pilot Program. When we say regenerative agriculture, I know a lot of folks know we're talking about a holistic farming approach focused on improving soil health. And the idea being if we can have healthy, diverse, resilient soils, we could have more nutrient-dense, healthy, and resilient food systems. And so what that might look like here in Alaska is a producer could put in a single application, and through that process, they could adopt multiple conservation practices that would help them implement regenerative agriculture. For example, cover crops is a big one for regenerative agriculture, crop rotations, prescribed grazing, and this would also include some forestry practices for folks who have non-industrial private forest land, such as thinning, woody residue treatment, and things like that. Is there anything you'd like to add on that, Elizabeth, on the regenerative agriculture?
Absolutely. So this process, the application process, is the same. You come in and you talk to a soil conservationist. This would happen through either the CSP or the EQIP program, so it is a separate program, but it's falling underneath the two programs that we already have. And it kind of is almost a bridge between an EQIP and a CSP kind of a contract. If you're not quite ready for an entire contract that addresses your entire operation all at the same time right now. This is something that under the EQIP, I have to fix this problem, but I want to look at everything. Let's sit down and try and build an entire farm plan that's going to take me through the next few years. The regenerative agriculture pilot program is something that would help with that and provide financial assistance and incentives to do a lot of more of assessments. A big piece of this project is actually soil health driven and involves multiple soil health tests to say, hey, here's our starting point. We're going to implement some practices. How effective were those practices? What are we getting out of this? And which hopefully in the future provides enough information for a producer to continue these changes long after NRCS has set up. We've set it all up for you. We've given you all of the information. Is this something that your operation should continue to do? And our hope is the answer is yes.
Okay, very good. Are there any particular events coming up in the near term that you want to talk about other than the willingness to listen to people and have them enroll in programs?
So we do. One of the announcements that we had a news release from National about our first batching period, which is January 15th. But we want to emphasize we take applications all of the time.
Okay.
Anytime that you would like to speak with an NRCS representative, a soil conservationist, please do. Please start this process. It is never too late.
So you use the term batching process. What does that mean?
When we accept applications, we like to talk with the producers and go out, meet them on their property and evaluate what the soil conservation needs are, what the conservation needs are in general. And so what the batching period means is that we've got this group of applications that we're working through. And that doesn't mean that if you show up on the 16th that we won't be able to help you. We absolutely will.
Okay, got it. That's helpful. I have a couple of questions here that I've been thinking of as you were speaking. Why did the two of you decide that NRCS was a place where you wanted to spend a fair portion of your life? Let's start with Tracy, and then we'll go to Elizabeth.
Well, just always having a love for the outdoors and nature and wildlife and our flora and fauna, and just wanting to have a career where I can support protecting and preserving that. And from the agricultural side, my grandparents were sheep farmers in Ohio, and I have a lot of fond childhood memories on the farm and have just always appreciated agriculture, wanted to support agriculture. So I feel like this job is kind of the perfect marrying of those two.
Okay, Thank you, Tracy. Elizabeth?
So shortly after I finished my obligations to the Army, my family purchased a farm in West Tennessee, and we also were farming sheep, so I had no idea that Tracy had that. Tracy and I had that in common. And reached out to NRCS, the local conservation office there in Benton County, and started working with them. It was a old grain operation long before we purchased the farm. It hadn't been farmed on in a very long time, and we needed to get it back into production. And so we reached out to NRCS and said, hey, we don't know what we're doing, please help us. And so had the conservationist come out, the district conservation at the time, and said, hey, here's all the things that I can help you. Here's the things that you need to think about for your operation. Let's see what we can make happen. And so we went through that entire process, did some pasture reseeding, worked on some fencing, got some waterers out there, and I was working on an ag degree at the time with the idea of continuing to work on the farm. And I thought what they were doing was amazing.
Wow.
And the designated district conservationist said, hey, I've got an opening in my field office if you want to apply, if you really think this is cool. And that's what happened.
Well, wonderful. Those both stories are very, very useful, I think, for people to understand this whole thing. The second question set was around, it sounds like there are offices all over the country. Every state has this. Alaska's got an agricultural history, but it's smaller than a place like, let me pick one at random, Iowa. So, yeah. So do you gather with people from other offices around the country from time to time to share whatever experiences or programs and so on?
Absolutely. Actually, we're doing one of those later this month. So that we do have them. Sometimes it's regionalized.
Okay.
And so there's, interestingly enough, some of the ag concerns we have here in Alaska are the same ones that Hawaii has.
Ah, there you go.
Because it's shipping costs, it's when can a barge get here, it's what can go on a plane versus what has to travel by boat. And so we reach out to people who are other states that are having kind of the similar issues. How are you guys solving these problems? Because we're not doing all of this in a vacuum. We have lots of leadership here in the state of Alaska that reaches back to national and says, hey, these are the issues that our producers are telling us that they have. How can we better support those? And so, yes, those conversations are happening all the time.
Okay. Well, thank you. Tracy, Elizabeth, thank you very much for coming in today. We have a minute or two left here. Any last comments you would like to make to listeners before we finish?
I do. I've got one. If you have any questions about anything that Tracy and I have discussed today or anything else related to NRCS or agriculture, please reach out to our local field office here in Wasilla. Is on Bogard Road next to Everett's Restaurant, and you are free to contact them at any time.
Okay, thank you. And Tracy?
Yes, I would echo that. Go talk to our friendly crew over in Wasilla. They service all of the Mat-Su Valley and the surrounding area. We've also got offices in other places around the state. Fairbanks, Delta Junction, Homer, Kenai, Kodiak.
Whoa.
Yeah.
But the folks in Wasilla are kind of our local go-to guys, and just really want to say thank you for listening, and I hope that someone out there will hear this and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go talk to those NRCS guys because I think they might be able to help me, and what they do is pretty cool. So
Okay. All right. Tracy, Elizabeth, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska. Ag Matters is a production of Radio Free Palmer, recorded at our studios in Palmer, Alaska. For more information about this program, email manager@radiofreepalmer.org.